Chances are that a lot of what you really don't enjoy doing are not producing that much fruit or accomplishing the mission of making disciples anyway. But all of us get caught on a hamster wheel of things that we've added to our list of responsibilities, or someone else has, that over time is a huge waste of our energy and resources. Remember, we all have only so much physical time and capacity, but we also have a limited supply of emotional capacity to spend each day and week. And if you're maxed out on both time and emotional energy, you'll hate your life. You'll have very little to give your family, and you'll hide and or die under a pile of exhaustion, and you'll never have time for making disciples in community in your own everyday life.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple Podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
Hey, my brother Heath, how are you running today? Running cool? Running hot?
I'm running okay. How are you?
You seem to be a little worked up over your day gig, just slightly.
Yeah.
Not like, anybody in particular, but just
It's the grind of going, man, I wish they would listen to some of us that are boots on the ground. You know, the day-to-day, people have something to say because they understand.
And just to point out, you're not working at the church gig anymore. So, but that still exists everywhere, right? It can. Here's another thing I have to ask you. How's your computer been running? Because I know you had some problems and challenges with this thing. Like, it doesn't want to run unleaded anymore. You're having to put special fuel in it or something.
Well, it's funny.
How old is that?
Yeah, this computer's 6 years old. I was just thinking about that. All of our gear has our microphones, our computers.
We cobbled together whatever we had running
to make it work.
Yeah, and still, right?
So it's funny because we're actually, my power supply, we're in between episodes. I have to plug it in and juice up a couple minutes before we go again. Otherwise, the battery's I can watch it just tick down from 100.
Right? Yeah.
But I've never been a PC guy.
Yeah. I was years ago.
Okay.
And then I had a buddy of mine who was so Mac, evangelist guy, when I was working at the big church. And he finally said, listen, just try a Mac. You're never, ever going to regret it. And so, I don't know. We're going to go there and we're going to get into this big debate and listeners are going to be all over us. And then it's
Mac or PC? Tell us in the
Mac or PC. Then it's going to be boxers or briefs and big fisticuffs. Maybe there's someone out there that wants to help Heath get a new computer. If you're out there,
that'd be nice.
But it's got to be a Mac. So don't offer to give him your used, compact 286 or whatever.
Picked up an old Dell at a garage sale.
He's running, he's
high octane to keep the show
But no,
going.
seriously, if there's anybody out there that wants to help Heath, and maybe we can put you on a show or put you on his podcast or something.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Oh, my.
I will say I was a PC guy growing up. When I got in the music business, everyone said, hey, you have to have Macs because that's kind of how we roll, which makes sense for production, that sort of stuff. Yeah. This would be really hard to do these shows on a PC.
It would be.
The job I'm at now issued me a PC. And the first few months, it's like my grandma learning, I'm a 35-year-old dude trying to figure out how to type, and I look like a 94-year-old woman trying to figure out where the keys are at.
Why do I have to use F keys? Every time I do, I go F.
Caps lock F.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, tell us in the Facebook group if you're a Mac or PC person. Let's cause some unnecessary fighting.
Hey, the group has gotten large.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Right? It's thousands of people now. So please jump in. The water's fine. Yeah. Tell us if you're a Mac, PC, box, or brief. Either way,
I'll keep you. I will say the way that you do get blocked, because I've had to block a couple of people recently. We haven't even talked about this. Is people that are posting promotional videos of themselves on the Facebook group.
Yeah, that's not what it's for.
No,
family.
We're not going to make you more famous.
Some people are trying to put their live stream up. That's not what it's for.
We're not doing this.
No, I mean, good. God bless you. But no, this is to have discussions around discipleship and the topics for that week primarily, so that it's not back 800 episodes. And then people are helping each other a lot. Hey, I'm trying to find that one episode about this or that.
How do I find
someone
this?
else will search it up and go, I think it's this one.
Yeah.
So good on you. Thanks.
And if you're a PC person, we've got a whole community of people that are experts in walking you from unbelief to belief into the Macintosh land.
Exactly.
And,
all right. Now today, This ancient, I don't know, distorted model of the pastor, CEO, jack of all trades has to do everything. And then as we grow, he gets lots and lots of assistants. That's always going to kill people. And I don't know of any businesses that are run that way where, the person who's the CEO has to be good at everything.
Sure. Yep.
Anyway, so I hope not, man. I don't want to kill anybody. And that's kind of what I want to talk to about today, or address today is I think that going forward, and this I would have had the same. In fact, I've been kind of scratching my head around this topic for way before there was ever anything called COVID-19 that we were aware of.
Sure,
is that I think a lot of pastors, a lot of leaders. So it doesn't have to be paid staff or anything, but just people leading in churches and in community groups and all. They probably could stop doing 80% of what they are currently doing, and they'd be healthier for it, and they'd be able to focus on that 20% that's actually producing fruit. That's kind of where I want to go today.
Yeah, man. That makes sense. And, even as you're talking, I'm just sort of wondering, do you think that this is kind of the reality that we've been given and pastors are going to have to deal with it as we wait for everything to pass? Or do you still think, as we've been saying here on the show for weeks, that this is actually a really amazing opportunity to make some core fundamental changes that are actually going to propel the church on mission going forward?
Man, I hope so, brother. I really do think so, though.
Okay.
I really do think God has given us a huge reset button of sorts. Not everybody's going to push the reset.
Sure.
It's just how long have you been fighting that? Tina's computer lately, it's just every time she hits a key, she waits for the cursor to react. I'm like, what's going on? Honey, reboot, It's I have. It's just, So, but I think God's actually given us a reset. And if we'll embrace it, the future of the church and our one true mission of discipleship will grow to include more of the priesthood of saints. Okay, more people exercising their gifts and serving others than ever before. And I think pastors and elders and all church leaders can shift more of their time to equipping the saints for acts of service. Go look in Ephesians 4, and discipleship in all of life.
Yeah.
And see us accomplishing what Jesus commanded and promised us, which is maturity in unity as believers, and more people being set free from performance-based religion and starting to truly walk in freedom with Jesus in all of life. I think if we'll embrace this and shed certain things going forward, this is what a cool time.
So, how would you say, how does a pastor or other church leaders begin to reframe their roles and how they spend their really stretched thin time so that we can actually see the things that you described happening more and more? Because I've got some pastor friends who now I know are up against a crunch because they go, it's time for us to innovate, but now they have to give account to either a board or elders that don't strategically think like that. And so they're kind of caught in this weird world. How do we serve pastors in this time?
Yeah, well, again, I kind of tipped my hand a second ago there, but I think most pastors need to stop doing about 80% of what they have been traditionally doing throughout the week.
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Okay.
Some of the new rhythms are kind of cool, and I think they kind of broadened out the week of hey, we're a family all week, right?
Sure.
So I'm not suggesting all that stuff needs to be killed or done away with, and the church elders are going to need to back them up on this and step up to the plate themselves in order for this to happen.
Yep.
Okay, so please think of this as family, not as we hired you to do everything we could dream up. It's your job, and then you've got a part-time assistant for crying out. Elders, step up and elder. Lead, be the big brothers and sisters of this community, right? And here's what I'd say to pastors. Start by assessing your personal, let me back up a second. Okay. This is how I think you can get to that, getting rid of a lot of stuff, okay? Start by assessing your personal and your church's core values and why you exist as a body.
Okay.
Do you exist to create loads of programming that's primarily consumed one day a week? Is that your calling? Okay. Understanding what drives you, really gets you up in the morning, will make it easier to stop doing things that are not really in line with your goals, your gifting, your church's values, your personal values.
Yeah.
Then start cutting out activities and tasks that don't support those. Okay. Look at what feels like drudgery to you every week and either cut that out or hand that to someone else in your church or staff that loves that stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Chances are that a lot of what you really don't enjoy doing are not producing that much fruit or accomplishing the mission of making disciples anyway. Right?
Yeah.
But all of us get caught sort of on a hamster wheel of things that we keep adding to our list of responsibilities or someone else has. And that over time, it's just a huge waste of our energy and resources.
Yeah. Even as you're saying that, I'm thinking of situations when I was in the institutional church working. It's kind of like a family budget too. You go, hey, times are tough. We went from $5,000 to $3,000 a month. Some things are going to have to get cut. What do they look like? How can we get creative in this?
What do we really value? What's critical?
Yeah. So this is actually a really good time for the church, your own individual church, to go, is it necessary that we have ministry here 7 nights a week? Are there any that we can outsource to different locations and make that the new rhythm?
Or could there be new home versions of these things decentralized, because now more people are engaged anyway? And, things like Awana this year. Are you doing Awana? Like, we got to get all back together and it's all got to be in the parking lot, in the church campus. Well, why not do distributed Awanas,
Well, and that's what
or VBS,
Sure.
Like, why not distribute VBS and let's have them all over the neighborhoods? What an impact, right?
Well,
and there's 100 of those kind of things. So we don't have to just, we don't have to get back to all that stuff.
And that's the sad thing for me, is watching these pastors that are just chomping at the bit to get back to what was, rather than going,
yeah. And we keep talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, this is like our 3rd or 100th episode about this.
Yeah. I guess we must really believe in it, huh?
Yeah.
And I've even heard too about this 80-20 rule. I think that's what it's called. That says, the premise of it is that 20% of our work actually produces 80% of the results, something like that.
Yeah. The 80-20 rule is also known as the Pareto principle.
Okay.
And that's attributed to this Italian economist. I don't even know if I can pronounce his name right. It's like Vilfredo Pareto. Okay.
Pinocchio's father.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it holds that the 80% of results in any organization come from 20% of the effort. And this has been studied like every way from, really, and there's a real reality to this.
Sure.
And that means you're probably spending 80% of your time actually not accomplishing much of what's truly important or moving the needle, based on the mission, the goal, making disciples. And we've also seen the 80-20 rule show up in most churches this way, where 20% of people do 80% of the work.
Yep.
Right? Is that true everywhere you've ever been?
Yeah. I've even heard 20% of the people do 80% of the giving. I mean, it's kind of across
it is
board.
that. No, it is that. And that's like 9. And people say, no, it's the 90-10 here, right? And a big part of that 20% of the church doing everything is the pastor, and often his wife and his family.
Yeah.
One time, Tina and I, we did a flow chart of responsibilities for a church plant that Tina and I were a part of, and we were getting ready to move. And they said, well, let's get clear on all the things that you guys were kind of leading in and involved in, and kind of keeping your finger on. And we were like in 17 key function slots on this chart. Way too many, right?
We wonder why people are burning out. Like,
oh yeah. And so and I wasn't senior pastor or anything.
Sure.
This is just a concerned family member, right? So not only does 80% of what is getting done not accomplish much, but the stuff that is important is getting done primarily by a small percentage of people in your church. So let's start to change that. Okay, please. So use this idea, sort of this 80-20 thing, this Pareto principle, to refocus your schedule.
Yeah.
And I want to suggest start creating a stop doing list. Okay, things that you're going to stop doing.
Yeah.
And you create that list from the 80% area of things, right, that aren't really accomplishing the mission.
Sure.
And start concentrating on the things that are bringing real results and bringing you joy, and you're seeing multiplication. Like, there's a disproportionate amount of joy and momentum from this 20% of stuff. This 80%, it's like expected. We got to do it. So from that 80% chunk, start creating your stop doing list. And let's start to grow the 20% of our church or community members that are already doing effective work. Let's really start to give them our best time and effort to equip them and more saints for service and equipping. Okay.
I don't want to break script too much here, but one thing that I think too is really important is just an honest assessment of what that looks like. Because there's some people, when you're in the rhythm of week in, week out, doing, you tend to not be fair with what is actually happening. And so I know there's all kinds of even apps on your phone where you can log your week and go, oh man, I really spent way more time on this than I thought. Yeah, it's a good...
Within coaching and even leading church staffs, I've done this many times throughout the years, and no one likes doing it, but I go, listen, I want you to log from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep every 15 minutes what you got done.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop.
It's shocking.
You don't have to stop every 15 minutes, but like if you were working on X, Y, or Z for like 45 minutes, at the end of that, go, all right, 45 minutes this.
Yep.
And I've never seen it be much better than 80-20. Like where it's like people come with their head hanging. Like, I'm like, what's up? And they're like, oh, just 2 weeks of doing that thing. I hated it. I'm like, what did you hate about it? I know it's kind of a pain, but
it's very revealing.
They're like, exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, you know what? I'm so embarrassed by how little actually like the stuff, the right stuff I spend my time. Wow. Am I distracted on a million other things or stuff that I think people expect. And I'm putting a lot of extra time in and, or whatever, pet project but it's not even moving the needle. Right.
Well, I'm doing that even at work right now where I'm going like, I got 12 hours of standing weekly meetings before I even get to start my work week. And
80-20, buddy. 80-20
Exactly.
principle. Take this home with you. All right, here's another thing.
Okay.
Resist energy drains. Like as things are starting back up and you're trying to, look at like, oh my gosh, I can't do everything we used to do and everything we still have to do and all this.
Sure.
You only have so much energy. And if your primary motivation for doing a lot of what you're doing is like obligation or guilt or just because that's what we've always done or whatever, that's not a wise use of your time. Like steward better than that, right? Man up, woman up, whatever, pull up, right? Pull up those big pants, and who wants a pastor anyway that's just doing their job merely out of obligation or guilt?
And no one.
All right. So know the people in your life and know the activities in your daily, weekly life that bring you energy, and then prioritize those activities and people.
That's good.
Chances are those people and activities are square in the middle of that super productive 20% anyway.
Sure.
So you're not like, oh, I'm forsaking all this stuff. No, you're not. You're focusing on the parts that are actually, accomplishing the mission. You're giving your time to those people who are probably getting most of that done anyway.
Yeah.
And you're looking for ways to start to equip more and more people to take stuff off of your plate so you can focus more and more on equipping and the 20%, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And remember, we only have so much physical time and capacity in life, but we also have a limited supply of emotional capacity to spend each day and week. Emotional capacity. So people look at their calendar and go like, man, I'm really busy. Or I wasn't that busy this week, but man, am I fried? It's like, you know why? Because it was high emotional level stuff.
Yeah.
And when you're doing a lot of stuff you don't feel good at, or it's not in your sweet spot, or it's not really in your values, that is eating up your emotional capacity, regardless of what the calendar looks like. So if you're maxed out on both time and emotional energy, you'll hate your life.
Yeah.
You'll have very little to give your own family and probably your church, and you'll hide and or die under a pile of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And you'll never have time for making disciples in community in your own everyday life. You'll just be like, I'm just too busy and I'm exhausted, and you will be.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be, okay? You don't have to be.
This might get a little bit of flack too. But one thing I've found to be just kind of a practical tip is, it's like runners who just keep running and running and running, and eventually they wear out. For me, I've got an app, like a mindfulness app, that twice a day just pings me to sit down for 5 minutes, close my eyes, listen to a little meditation thing. And I'm amazed how taking 5 minutes and slamming on the brakes and sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the
I
next
did
2
10
or 3
minutes.
hours, I just go.
I did 10 minutes right before you got here today to record the podcast because I'd just been running today.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to bring that sense of like scatteredness and like freaking out to this, which we love doing.
Yeah.
This in my life is the 20% for sure.
Sure.
It's moving the needle. And so, yeah, I totally agree
Things
with
like
you.
that,
Man.
yeah.
I agree with you.
So I'm sure pastors, even church leadership, are kind of listening to this, maybe a little anxious. And I'm kind of curious, like, how can leaders start to engage their roles and how they actually spend their time without everyone just getting freaked out or without them worried about being fired by the elder board, stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, my guess is that for a lot of people, especially if you're a pastor listening to this and you're leading, probably between 60 and 90% of your church's time and budget is spent in some way around Sunday mornings. And now maybe you'd say, well, Sunday's been closed, but now it's triple that to put it all online. Well, now it's coming back. So now you're going to have triple times triple, right? And that, right. But you're having so little time to release new missional leaders, new disciple makers, right?
Sure.
To really equip people in their gospel fluency. And that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be the next thing. See, that's the thing about this whole beautiful opportunity that God's given us for like a reset is that there's always going to be something we can hide behind and all that. And I just want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that you change everything overnight. Okay. And I've talked to my buddy Mike Breen about this, and he's written on this. There's always going to be stuff that needs to be changed. And his suggestion is you go after evolution rather than revolution. He says revolutions are bloody and expensive, and usually everyone on both sides ends up dead.
Wow, it's true.
Right? So you want evolution. So I'm not suggesting you go like, listen, I was listening to the Caesar and Heath, and I'm going to stop doing 80% of stuff tomorrow. What we're trying to say is you probably can get to this, and you'll be so much more effective and have joy, right? So what do you do? And so here again, this is some of Mike's language. Imagine your church is a cart, and a horse.
Okay.
There are things in your church that are higher maintenance. They require a lot of organization, a lot of your time and attention, and that's fine up to a point. But the horse, the thing that pulls the cart, that's you and your best leaders. Okay, the people who are leading communities on mission, actually really making disciples. They're the ones who are going to lead the church into the future, really, the missional frontier, if you will, and they're going to take the cart along with them, okay? But the problem comes when we have carts that are just too heavy and too ornate and elaborate and fancy and lights and sound and action, and they're too inflexible and they are high maintenance, right?
Sure.
We want to be a lot more lightweight than that, okay? So if that's your situation, here's what I think you need to do. You need to feed the horse, right? And slowly make the cart more lightweight, okay?
Yeah,
that's what you start taking stuff out of the cart. Like, hey, we're getting back to doing Sundays, and Sundays used to include this, all that, and we spent all week getting ready for it. Why don't we take some of that stuff off?
Yep.
Like why could you not come back and say, instead of having like the crazy light show and this and that and all the sound and the 18-piece band and special music, why can't we say, scale that back a little bit. We're going to have like an acoustic, someone on a piano, maybe a couple of vocalists. Yeah. We're going to be sitting down. Like the lights just come on. That's where they're at. We don't need 18 people in tech. Yeah. Not because we're looking to fire people, but like we want them out actually doing the 20%, the stuff that moves. And I want to give them that focus. So now think about your production meetings and how much they just changed throughout the week and what you could start to focus on.
Absolutely.
Here's another example. If someone who teaches or preaches regularly, you're spending, I don't know, some people spend like 30 hours a week on their message. Well, discipline yourself to start to do it in 20. I remember when I got to a point where I said, I'm not going to spend more than 10 hours a week on a message.
Really?
Yeah.
10 hours.
Guess what? There's another principle here that says that something like the amount of time allotted will always rise to meet the need, or vice versa, or something like that. And so what I found is when I had 10 hours to prep a message,
you better get it done in that 10 hours.
they were just as good. In fact, they were more concise. They didn't tend to run on. I usually had one big idea or two that were being totally developed versus I had to read every
commentary.
And every all of it. And there was all these disjointed things, and it was proof texting all over the wall, and it was crazy, right? What if we took that prep time and we took all that creative meeting time and it was all cut back by like, just say 25% to get started.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what if all the money usually allotted for Sunday mornings was cut back by a certain percentage and reallocated to equipping saints, getting coached, right? Developing communities that actually multiply and make disciples, growing in gospel fluency. That's how we're going to make disciples and win the day. Not getting back to everything else times 100 plus all the new digital rhythms, right? Yeah. And so I just say you got to start taking stuff out of the cart. What are those things you can, get out of the cart? Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the things that I've learned over time is you don't want to just kill off things. What you want to do is you want to sort of defund them with your attention. I think Mike calls it studied neglect. Okay.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Right. So some leaders out there are more prone to revolution. And instead of being patient with the process, they take a sledgehammer to the cart rather than a scalpel. Sure. Right? And when you do that, when you start killing off stuff, like we're getting back together, but we've just killed everything and events and all these different stuff, and you do it all in one fell swoop, people will feel it and they'll freak out. And maybe they don't even really know that it's not benefiting them or whatever, but they just feel like they lost something, right? Yeah. And so it's a pretty easy thing. Rather than killing stuff, stop resourcing it with your attention. That's why he calls it practice neglect. I call it just defund it. Yeah. I'm not giving it my time. We're not equipping to that anymore. You know what? We're not paying staff to have 15 or 20 hours of production time for Sunday. You can prep that up. It's the same 30, 40 songs that we've done for the last 10 years. Yep. You can prep that thing up in 2 or 3 hours.
Easy to go.
If you don't know your songs by now, and you got music stands in front of you, which has always been my pet peeve anyway.
I hate it.
I never saw that at a concert in my life. But, we're just going to start limiting some of these things. And you know what? In the body, we're going to ask them to be cool with it. Yeah. Hey, because if they are like, I'm not coming here because, if there's not 3 electric guitars and 2 keyboardists and all those where's my choir? It's like, listen, you can let them go. That's okay. So
let it go.
Don't remember, not evolution. Or not revolution, evolution. Yeah. Start by finding some of these things or suggesting a certain percentage be taken out of the cart. But don't just take stuff out of the cart so you can add more of the wrong stuff in. Go back to that 80-20 principle. Look for the things that are making disciples, developing leaders, stuff like that. That's going to be key. like I said, you have a very finite amount of time and energy and emotional capacity and all that and attention, right?
Sure.
So whatever you're starting, that from anytime you add stuff, something has to come out, or you're doing worse at all of it. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, please don't miss this too. Okay. Sorry, I'm running on a little bit here. Please don't miss this. We have to start equipping more of our people for mission and disciple making. And see, now is the perfect time to do everything we're suggesting here, because we have a very real and plausible quote unquote excuse.
Sure.
Right? That our folks and our elders will understand. Like, we're coming out of something that's happened globally that's never before happened in the way that it's happened,
exactly.
before. So, well, there's been pandemics. Not when we had sound systems and lighting and electricity and all that, you know what
crazy.
I mean? And all that, and Skype and Zoom and all this, right? Mm-hmm. So everything has and is changing. And there's no way that the pastor, preacher, CEO, jack of all trades model of pastoring and leading different areas of ministry or children's ministry, whatever, will suffice as we go forward. And people all understand that.
They do.
So it's like, in sales and in marketing, why do the sales all happen like a Memorial Day sale or like a 4th of July sale? Like, oh, you know what? That's what I always think about as a new TV on the 4th of July. They're just looking for a plausible reason to do something, make it change, spend some money, whatever.
Yeah.
Your body, your church, your people, and hopefully your elders as well, they'll all understand, hey, it's all different. It's all changed. It was crazy before and we weren't all that stoked.
Yeah, exactly.
About where, how many disciples we were making and how that was going. And now we're going to try to do it all virtually and come back. But now instead of doing 1 or 2 services, we have to do 4 because we can only have this many people and all that. Okay. Create your stop doing list. Okay. Check it against your core values. Hand off things to others that are important, but here's another thing. Don't call it delegating, and really what you're doing is abdicating.
Ooh,
okay?
That's good, yeah.
Right? A lot of people say, well, I'm going to start delegating a lot more. And you hand it off and they crash.
Sure.
And they burn, or they feel neglected or forced. No, equip them.
Yep.
Equip them. Check in with them. How's it going? How about you watch me do it this week? Then I'll help you. Then you'll help me. Then I'll watch you. Then I'll give you a little feedback. Then you're on your own. Come to me if you need help. Take things out of your cart, defund or exercise that practice neglect, right? Then train and equip folks to take on things from that 20% part of the list that are really working and important, right? And are producing disciples. And you know what? Don't be afraid of letting your people sort of fail forward, or like I like to say, suck forward, right? And create new ways and experiences for doing things. And here's what your posture needs to be as a leader to be able to do this, is you're going to exercise low control over your people, but high accountability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Low control. So listen, I don't have to micromanage all that because now I'm just busier.
Yep.
I'm letting go. I'm not abdicating because I'm equipping. I'm delegating. I'm letting people. I'm having low control, but high accountability that they're actually getting it done.
Yeah.
That if I ask them to get back to me with any questions they did, that's accountability. That's what adults do. That's what healthy family does too. And you know what? People are probably wondering right now. So how do I know who to hand what to?
Sure.
Right? And if you're a smaller community, you're like, there's nobody to give anything to. It's like, ooh, who will take up these new leadership roles?
Sure.
That's what we're going to talk about next week on the podcast, okay? Can't
Awesome.
go. I'm already starting to preach now, right? So, but yeah, we'll tell you how to find the right people to do what with. But anyway, there you go. I'm going to stop there before I get back on my preaching soapbox.
Yeah, I'm thinking too that this really does show whether or not your church actually functions as a family or a business in the way the response is to this.
Yep.
If it's, hey, you're failing, there's a 90-day plan to get you to speed, or you're fired, you're done like that. I mean, you're like, we're a business. If there's grace, we're falling forward, we're learning, we're serving one another.
Yep.
You're a family. And so I think this is really where you can separate the sheep from the goats and go, we're a family or we're a business. And what are we?
And this isn't just about pragmatism. So like we can get more done. No, it's about, are we doing the right thing?
Yep.
And taking 80% off while we've got this opportunity so we can give full attention to the 20% of the people and the things that are actually making a huge difference and making disciples and building the kingdom and seeing people come to faith and all that. Because let's be honest, so much of what we do doesn't.
Absolutely.
But we just keep doing it week after year after,
we do.
millennial. So
I'm working with a church right now who, they just spent millions and millions and millions on a new building because the pastor says that this is the way that you keep people coming. This is the way you attract people to Jesus, by the lighting show and the LED walls. And
okay. All right.
Keep it up, man.
Okay.
All right, let's get to the big three.
All right.
Because as always, we want to leave people with big 3 takeaways from today's topic. So if nothing else, things that you do not want to miss
And by the way, you can always get a printable PDF of each week's Big Three as a free download by going to everydaydisciple.com/Big Three. Okay, so here's the Big Three for this week. It's too easy to slide into more and more responsibilities and busyness thinking that we're being productive when we're actually not. See, productivity is not about packing as much as humanly possible into your day and your schedule. Don't forget to look at your personal and family responsibilities in time as well. Okay, you are one person with one calendar, and your capacity, both in time and emotional capacity, it's not limitless.
Yeah.
All right.
You're right. You don't let the church kill your family and everything else because you're working so hard to keep that thing fed.
You're like, well, I'm busy, so it must be good. It must be productive. No.
Nope.
Okay, second, you have nothing to prove to others or earn from God by how you spend your time. Okay? I just let that soak in. You have nothing to prove to others or earn from God, who's the only one whose approval you need, and you have it, by how you spend your time. You are deeply and completely loved right now because you're God's child.
That's good.
Okay? Your loving Father does not want you fried and freaked out and frazzled all the time. Okay? Ask the Holy Spirit to show you, regardless of traditions and past expectations of others, what you should best be spending your time on for maximum kingdom fruitfulness and joy in your life.
Yeah.
Trust God with the results. The pressure's off, okay?
Amen.
All right?
Amen, man.
All right, third, look at your current responsibilities and create a stop-doing list based on your core values and the 80-20 rule of effectiveness that we talked about. Okay? Like, stop, do that. Like, take out paper this week. Sit down, do an 80-20 list. You'll be shocked, okay? If you're real bold, do that whole time thing where every 15 minutes you log what you've been doing throughout a whole day for 2 weeks, okay? That'll prove what we're saying is probably true, okay? Assess how much of your time and effort's being applied to the one true mission of the church, which is making disciples of Jesus who make more disciples.
Yeah.
That's stark alone.
Yeah.
Do a lot more of that stuff, okay? And start removing other things from your cart right away. Your time is best spent equipping the saints for acts of service, not doing everything for your people and keeping them babies for years and years and years.
Amen.
Okay, so there's your Big Three.
Isn't this freeing?
And again, before we scoot out of here today, I want to invite you to get immediate access to the Everyday Disciple Workshop. We've trained thousands of people in this powerful framework of discipleship when we were doing our Everyday Disciple challenges, and we always had people asking us how they could get and keep this training and all the videos. Well, now you can. Just go over to everydaydisciple.com/workshop to get this simple and reproducible discipleship framework that really works for busy people. That's everydaydisciple.com/workshop. I hope you'll grab that, get that downloaded, start watching that, and start sharing that with others, because now you'll have all of it. All right, I got to go for now. I hope you'll join us next week. I'll keep diving into discipleship and mission and hopefully help pave the way for this to be a whole lot easier and more natural in your everyday life. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.